In this video we are going to scream in agony over the potential loss of our army of renown, being back to bottom tier, and Space Marines not getting everything for Christmas that we want. Just kidding, it's not all that bad. Over the course of the video, we will first take a look at the most recent Metawatch win rates and how and where Deathwatch made it back onto the list. In the second part, we will then discuss what I would personally like to see happening for both Space Marines and the Deathwatch in the upcoming January changes. For the final part, I will wrap things up not only for this particular video, but also for yet another year of Warhammer 40k.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tammer, and I will be guiding you through this video.
First things first, let's have a look at the recent development of the Metawatch series of articles published on Warhammer community. The good news is that Deathwatch is back on the chart with the win rate percentages since the last data slate update, but perhaps not the way we were hoping for. With 38% win rate, Deathwatch ranks second to last, just above AdMech with a mighty 1% lead and 2% below Codex Space Marines. I guess we can blame Mikkel Klangby for not winning more tournaments. On a more serious note, as I have mentioned many times in the past on Deathwatch win rates, with such a small sample size, the percentage tends to fluctuate a lot, and basically one or two good players carrying the faction at any given point can boost the win rate through the roof, or of course the opposite can happen when a few events are not going all that well for the Deathwatch players. As far as Deathwatch is concerned, they did not specifically say anything about our faction, but I would go as far as rating this recent development as positive, simply because they are now acknowledging that something needs to be done about the poor Space Marine win rates past blaming beginners, and with Deathwatch being one such bottom entry, they might give us a little extra on top of what is coming for Space Marines in general. Speaking of Space Marines, while they did not list anything concrete in the latest Metawatch video, they basically confirmed that bigger interventions are coming for the bottom factions, including Space Marines. This could be through both the balanced status slate as well as the points rebalancing. I suppose the question remains how big such an intervention could be, because I also recall how they were saying in previous videos that they do not want to overdo it in one single go, though perhaps they have learned their lesson from the shock tactics approach. Anyway, they further stated that Space Marines still make around 17% at larger events, but as I was mentioning in my October tournament results video, this used to be way higher with close to 25% over a year ago. Last but not least, they were also mentioning the upcoming chapter approved mission pack coming January, where we will have to make different choices compared to Nephilim, and while this does not say much, perhaps they are looking into the whole matter of starting CP once more, and I think for Space Marines in particular, this would go a long way with our amazing relics and traits. With the latest Metawatch out of the way, what would be my personal wish list for the upcoming January changes? GW, if you are listening, now is the time to start making notes. First and perhaps most discussed already is the fate of our Army of Renown, the Kill Team Strike Force, so I will keep this one brief. Ideally, we would get the expiry date extended up until we get a new Deathwatch supplement, as our AOR is not only incredibly fluffy, but also highly competitive. I think I can safely say that a lot of Deathwatch players, myself included, are really digging into picking the different army-wide chapter tactics and leaning heavily into kill teams, and I would go as far as saying that this is how the army is meant to be played from a lore perspective. But anyway, get it done GW, there is not much else to say about this one. That aside, let's focus on what we know is coming for sure, which are the new chapter approved release with the missions and points, as well as the balanced data slate. Here I really hope that GW will focus on Space Marine troops. While Deathwatch is somewhat unique among the chapters, with our highly competitive kill teams, most chapters think of troops as attacks and/or a way to get something specific, like a forward deploy with Phobos units done. But otherwise, as standard Space Marine just doesn't scale well into the current power creep of 9th edition, which is somewhat ironic. I would go as far as arguing that even for the Deathwatch, our amazing Deathwatch veterans aside, all troops used in Primaris kill teams can be considered as attacks. Yes, we can make them work as ablative wounds, and for the benefits they bring by providing access to the second half of the kill team, but that's about it. The good news here is that Stu Black himself has commented on the underperformance of Space Marine troops in particular in some of the Metawatch videos, and as a result, I am at the very least expecting points drops to happen this time. This would in turn already be a benefit to our Primaris kill teams, though I am of course hoping that they would also take the time and review faction-specific datasheets, such as our Deathwatch veterans. I would however not stop at points only, and I do believe that they should go a step further and either improve bolters across the board or improve parts of the offensive profile, sort of an addition to Armor of Contempt having taken care of defense. Now it's time to boost the overall Space Marines offense. And yes, this time Space Marines only, or we'll end up in that awkward situation again, where Sisters of Battle end up being the main benefiters. Nothing against the Sisters, of course, they are my second army, but I think that they are sitting comfortably enough on that Metawatch chart. Anyway, points are certainly the easiest to adjust, but I do hope that GW is going to get a bit more creative this time, even if it means that the benefits are going to be spread across multiple balanced data slates or the sorts. After all, that's why we get them quarterly now. But assuming at least some points reductions, I think in case it really hits all troops across the board, it will easily free enough points in our kill team heavy lists to fit in another chapter command upgrade or additional war gear that just wasn't possible at the moment, especially not with the Army of Renown and being locked into specialisms and preferably full-sized kill teams. The second change I would like to see is the handling of CP for Space Marines. With the changes to starting CP in Warzone Nephilim, access to our amazing warlord traits and relics is far more limited, and a lot of stratagems feel even more overpriced. I think that this is particularly true for Deathwatch, where several former kill team abilities like Fall Back and Shoot or Fall Back and Charge have been moved to stratagems, and then combine this with Brotherhood of Veterans still at 2 CP in the days of AOR, and it's really just not adding up anymore. What I would like to see here is getting the free relic and warlord trait back, discounting a few 2 to 3 CP stratagems, including Brotherhood of Veterans for Deathwatch, and then as a general change, also getting rid of the Martial Legacy CP tax. I understand why it was there, but Space Marine vehicles have not aged well in this edition, and Warzone Nephilim rules have added insult to injury. Which brings me to the third change, the Space Marine vehicles. GW tried some points decreases already in the past, they tried Armor of Contempt, neither of which did help an awful lot, but it might just have brought several of them close to being competitive. Ultimately, as we are seeing with both Dreadnoughts, as well as with recent Necron changes, having the core keyword or not goes a long way, but then of course there is always the threat of old Iron Hands. I don't envy GW for the task of balancing these properly, and I suppose they can always try with another round of points drops, making certain loadouts free, or even increasing the power of some of the vehicle weapons, as they did with some more recent Codex releases, but perhaps this is also another kind of change that needs to be slowly developed over the course of several balanced data slates. Then lastly, and more Deathwatch specific, I would love for them to address the matter of chapter tactics and super doctrine. While I am pretty happy with mission tactics myself, I think the fact that it's just a matter of changing doctrine order, rather than actual stats, Combined with the chapter tactics being too specifically aimed at Xenos, stats do matter in the end, as we are for instance seeing with Blood Angels. In addition to that, there are just too many armies that can counter wound rerolls to some degree by now. Furthermore, a revisit to what datasheets can be included in kill teams are always welcome. The 40's kill team specifically could do with some suppressors or even Blade Guard veterans. Needless to say that any future datasheets, like that rocket launcher Primaris Marine that is making the rounds again, should also be unlocked for the corresponding kill team of the Deathwatch. Then as a final thought, something I dislike immensely about our Primaris kill teams, when compared to the Proteus kill team, is that the base tags are not veteran datasheets. For intercessors at least these already exist, and it would be nice to have something like this across the board for all kill teams. To make a long story short, dear GW, my Christmas list for this year would be the extension of the Deathwatch Army of Renown rules until a new Deathwatch supplement comes out, the strengthening of Space Marine troops choices, be it with points decreases and/or additional rules improving bolters, addressing CP cost through a combination of bringing back free warlord traits and relics, getting rid of the martial legacy tax, and reviewing the cost of 2 to 3 CP stratagems. This specifically applies to Deathwatch, that got former abilities moved to stratagems. Furthermore, please look into making Space Marine vehicles outside of Dreadnoughts more viable again, and finally, because we have been good Deathwatch players all year, and yet still ended up pretty much at the bottom of the recent Metawatch win rate stats, throw us a bone and improve our chapter tactics and our super doctrine, and allow additional datasheets to be included into kill teams, such as suppressors and Blade Guard veterans. While I am well aware that not everything may be possible at once, I think you guys now have tools available, with the shift towards several virtual releases like the points and the balanced data slate, to get it right over the course of the following months. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at the most recent Metawatch win rate percentages and how Deathwatch ended up being pretty much at the bottom once more. Flashback to the start of 9th edition, or simply a matter of low sample size paired with struggling Space Marines? Either way, the good news is that GW has pretty much confirmed at this point that bigger interventions are coming early next year. Furthermore, I went through my personal wish list of changes, ranging from keeping the Deathwatch Army of Renown, several Deathwatch specific changes, but most importantly, making struggling Space Marines datasheets like troops and vehicles viable again, as well as solving the CP situation that has been partly created with the Warzone Nephilim rules. I believe in you, GW. Having said all that, I wish you guys great holidays. Hopefully you will get to enjoy both the festivities as well as some time for the hobby, and I will be looking forward to digging into the coming changes together next year, whatever they may be. I am keeping my fingers crossed. So that's it for the most recent Metawatch win rates and what January might have in store for us. What do you guys think is going to happen to both Space Marines and the Deathwatch? And which datasheets are going to come out on top? Thoughts on my personal wish list and what are the kind of changes you would like to see yourself? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. I do also have a Patreon page. If you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.